Welcome back everybody, Mark here, and we're going to start lesson 9 of our tutorial series. And what we're going to do in lesson 9, I was thinking about it last night, and I kind of talked about setting that text to transparent. So let's go ahead and select scene and run our solution from last night, from lesson 8. You guys remember we added another sprite, we did some Z ordering, we actually did some more sprite commands, we actually stopped our sprite from going off the screen. We even have his X and Y position in the upper left hand corner, as you guys can see. But it has this weird like white background, this block. Kind of doesn't look that great. So my thought was I would introduce you guys to functions. So I kind of talked about subroutines. So we're going to call two subroutines and a function. And we're going to use them to actually get rid of that white text block. So let me go ahead and close this window. Go into our zoom in mode here. So one of the first things we need to do is we actually need to set up our functions at the end of our file. And what I like to do is a lot of times is I'll do these comment blocks like this. So it kind of like separates what we're doing. Kind of separates code. I'll go over here like this. And I know I've kind of talked about it before, but sometimes this organization really helps. You know, it allows you to see where everything is. It kind of sets up things nicely. So what I'll do is I'll do a comment block, and I'll do some comments in this block. So a lot of times I do cap blocks, and I'll do begin, functions, and subroutines. Then I'll just delete all this space here. So a lot of times, and then if you're really OCD, you can really center it up if you want it perfectly centered. That's all depending on you guys. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll actually copy this and I'll paste it just below itself, maybe a couple spaces in between, and I'll change this to end functions and subroutines. But you really should have all of your functions and subroutines at the end of your file. And I should rephrase that. You should and need to have your functions and your subroutines at the end of your file for them to work properly. You also want to make sure there's the wait command and end or return commands from your file. So right here, we're returning from these subroutines that we used last night. Our file ends here, but we have wait commands to keep this from falling into our functions. We don't want to do that. We'll have some really weird side effects. So when we start talking about functions tonight in our subroutines, we're going to talk about more advanced functions and subroutines. We're actually going to call some DLLs. So we're going to actually talk to the Windows API. And the reason why we want to do that is we actually want to use some of these built-in functions. Now, if you're using just BASIC to follow along with these tutorials, I want to let you guys know right now that these calls to the DLLs will not work in just BASIC. You need to have Liberty Basic to use them. So there is a limitation there, and I wanted to let you guys know that right up front. Just BASIC will let you call the DLL files. So let's go ahead and set up our first subroutine. So sub, and we're actually going to call this set BK, then we're going to say mode, and then we're actually going to pass it a couple of parameters. So we're going to call this one HDC, which is the handle to our window. So this is our device context, basically, handle device context. And then we're actually going to have a flag, and this flag is either going to set, and these are comments here. So number 1 would be transparent. And number 2 would be opaque. Now, so once we do that, we actually want to call our DLL. So we're going to say call DLL. And the DLL that we're calling to use this function is the GDI 32. Use a comma. And then the function we're actually calling in that DLL file is set BK mode. Because we're actually setting this mode. And we're going to pass it HDC as a parameter. And we can say as long. Now long is a data type. Now long is a signed long integer that can be a positive or a negative value. If it was an unsigned long, it can only have a positive value. And then we need to make sure that it has this underscore at the end. So we call the DLL and we're going to tell it, what we're going to get it back as. So we're looking for the flag as a long as well. And then we're looking for the result. Now I've seen result spelled as capital, so we could do this. If I follow what I've seen out there in the world, result as long. So that's how we're getting our data back. And then we actually want to end our subroutine. So I know there's a lot of new data here, but basically we created a subroutine called set BK mode, set our background mode. And then we're going to call the DLL. We're actually going to set our background mode. And then we're actually going to return the result. We then want to set up a function. Set up a function, we do function. And then we got to give our function a name. So we're going to call it get DC. And I'm going to do an episode that's just about building a simple function. And we're going to pass the handle to our window to this function. So we're going to pass that. And once again, when we call this function, we're going to call a DLL again. And this DLL is going to be the user 32 DLL. And the function we're calling out of that is get the device context, which is basically our window. So it's the client area or the specified window or the entire screen, but this is our device context. So we're looking for that. We're trying to find it so we know which window that we can change the background of that text on. And so we're going to have a few parameters. We're actually going to look at the window handle that we pass, and that's also going to be a long integer data type. And then basically we're going to use the name of our function, get DC. You can see that's identical to our function name as long. So we're actually going to set our get DC as a long. Then we're going to end our function. So we have one more subroutine that we need to do. So first we called our DLL function to set the background mode, but now we need to go ahead and release that device. So we got the device with our function, but now we need to actually let it go so we can free it up to be used by other applications later on. So once again, this is going to be a subroutine. We're going to call it release DC. And we're going to pass the handle to our window and the handle to our device context. So our first subroutine and our function are going to have this information for us. Then we're going to call our DLL. And the DLL we're calling this time is the user 32, which we did with our function. But this time we're actually going to call the function release DC. And we're going to pass it the handle to our window. And that as a long integer. A long signed integer, excuse me. Don't forget the underscores, they are important at the end here. So then we want to set the value. So HDC as long. And then we'll have our result. And just to show you that result and uppercase result are the same thing, I'll just go lowercase on this one, as long. And then we can end our subroutine. So those are our two subroutines in our function. I hope they make sense. I'm going to show you how we call them now. Like I said, I will do an episode that actually talks more about functions. We'll actually We'll actually design a function using the main window, and we'll use it to add some numbers together and stuff. I'll explain it in more depth. But we're kind of covering a lot of information here, but I wanted to show you guys that you can do a lot with Liberty Basic. So as I scroll up a little bit here, we're actually looking to where we can actually put in those calls. We'll do it right below the font right here. I think this is a good spot. And I'm going to actually make another comment block here, just for clarity for you guys. So I'll go like this. And a lot of times you can just copy and paste this. I don't think I really type these out at all anymore. Then what I'll do is I'll just delete that like that. And I just do this. It's a lot quicker. And basically what I want to do in here is call this transparent text call. So you guys can see this is where we're actually going to call all our functions from. Kind of clears it up for us. And the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to call our actual function. So we're going to create this local variable here called HDC, and we're basically going to say it equals get DC. And what we're going to do, we're going to use a built-in function, which is HWND, which is a handle to our window. And we're going to pass in the actual handle to our window, gaming world. Once I spell it right here, gaming world. So we're actually passing gaming world into this function. So if we scroll down here, you can see we're calling it. It's going to pass the handle to gaming world. That's what's coming right in here. And basically we're going to call this user32, the DLL. We're going to use this get device context function. It's going to have the handle to our window as a long integer. So it's going to get our window, and it's going to actually set the focus to our window so we can use it in our subroutines. And that's what this does right here. The name of the function, getDC, which I already see an error coming up because I have lowercase c there. So getDC. These need to make sure they match. So getDC is long. So just by reading what I wrote, I debugged my own code. And you guys can see how easy you can put a bug in your code. Upper and lowercase. So, you know, sometimes it's good to just slow down. I'm trying to do lessons, so I know I'm kind of going fast sometimes. But I'm going to try to dial back the speed a little bit, give you guys a lot of information, and try to explain it very well. The next thing we want to do is we actually want to call our first subroutine. So we're going to call, and we're actually calling the set BK mode. And we're going to pass it our HDC, and we're going to pass it 1. So when we scroll down, remember how I said before we had these comments, we have a flag. Well, number 1 is transparent. So we're passing it the handle to our window, and we're passing the flag 1, which means transparent. So that's what we're actually passing into this call to DLL. So we're saying, okay, call the DLL, call the set background mode function, pass the handle to our window, and then we're actually sending in the flag as a long, and the result is as a long. So as it sends the result back, it sees, okay, the result that we need is the code for, or the set for transparent background. And that's what we're returning. So that's what we're doing there. That's how we actually set the transparency. Then our last call is to release our device context. That way we don't hang it up. And here we're doing our special function handle to our window. We're passing in gaming world. And then we're passing in our HDC, our device context. So we're telling it to release our window so that other programs can actually use that device context. So that's what you can see here. We call it, we pass in the handle to our window, we pass in our device context, which is our window, and then we release all that information or all that data so we can use it later on. So it can be used by other applications, excuse me. So now if we were to run this, let me go back to our window. Let me go back where you guys can see it. And we were to run this. So I did something here. What did I do? What is not matching? Syntax error. So just bear with me here. Call DLL user 32. Release DC. HWND as long. I'll try to build it again. No, we don't want to just do some code. So let's see. HDC as long. Result as long. And sub. Let's see. Why is that not working? So it made it into our call to our DLL. I know, right here. See this 1 comma? This 1 comma is what is stopping our program from working. So if I actually delete that comma and run it now you can see that our program runs, and you can see how our white background has gone away from our text, and now it's just transparent. We can see our sky. Looks a lot cleaner, it looks a lot nicer. And you can see how it's really nice. So that's our introduction to functions and subroutines, kind of a deeper dive. I'll cover functions quite a bit more. We can look at them and see what we can do with them. And I'll try to show you guys and give you a better understanding. If you have a question on functions, please don't forget to post a comment down there. Say, hey, I'm trying to do this with a function, or how does this work? Please let me know. I'll answer your question as soon as I can. But I really appreciate you guys coming and watching. If you haven't already, please hit the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys. See you in the next episode.